In a world overflowing with distractions, we seek meaning. How do we transform ambition into something deeper, into true fulfillment? I'm Sam Pepin, CEO of Course-Educa, and I've spent years helping businesses succeed by connecting their goals to something bigger. On the Meaningful podcast, we explore not just how to win in business, but how to grow as individuals. Through conversation with thought leaders, innovators, and everyday heroes, we uncover the stories that drive us towards something greater. Whether you're striving for success, seeking purpose, or just looking for the next steps in your journey, this podcast is your guide to navigating the intersection of ambition, growth, and meaning. So please join me and our incredible guests as we redefine what's possible in both business and life. Enjoy. In the cookie of life, friends are the chocolate chips. Welcome to the Meaningful Podcasts. I'm your host, Sam Pepin, and today we're diving into 3 transformative themes: mastering the science of friendships, the power of intentional relationship, and cultivating connection that enrich your life. Our guest today is Shane Gerhard, the creator of the Friendship Blueprint. Shane works to redefine how we think about friendships, offering a practical and insightful guide to transforming everyday encounters into meaningful, lasting connections. Whether it's understanding vulnerability or building a chosen family, Shane's wisdom is here to help you navigate the complexity of modern relationships. If you enjoyed this discussion, please let the world know with a like, a small review, or even a quick share. Your support helps more people find meaningful content just like this. Let's begin. Mr. Shane Gerhard, welcome on the Meaningful Podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, it's great to have you here. It's actually the first time that we encounter each other, but what you're doing is so insightful and I think resonates so well with our mission that I'm sure will be a very insightful conversation. To start us off, please tell us more about the Friendship Blueprint.
Yeah, absolutely. Essentially, what I learned over pressing so deeply into what does it mean to have meaningful friendships, I encountered there's 6 elements to friendship. And if you could take a couple of those elements out, but it's not going to get you the meaningful connection that most of us desire in having that healthy relationships in our life. And so another interesting thing is that I learned that most people, generally speaking, they are really good at 1 or 2 of the things, but they lack the other half. And if people were able to get their hands on those elements, which I'm pretty sure we're going to be covering a lot in today, it can really set them for success when they go in to have those friendships that they've been craving and desiring.
Yes, absolutely. And when you're thinking about this mission of building connection that lasts, one of my favorite quote actually from C.S. Lewis is friendship is born at the moments when one person say, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." Right? This kind of like aha moment. How big of basically friendship is based on that kind of like understanding of just wanting to be friend to elevate yourself.
I would say just the initial component of it and having that aha moment is good and it's important, but I wouldn't put too much pressure on that. I wouldn't say it has a crazy significance when it comes to that area of building meaningful connections. Like I myself have had terrible introductions with people, or I have friends now that I hated when I met them. We actually would butt heads and argue all the time, but I started to apply all the principles that I teach on having meaningful friendships, and it improved our relationship significantly. So having that relatability is a great connection point. And a lot of what I teach too is how do you take someone that you want to go deeper with, and what does that process look like a lot of the time? But I don't put too much significance on the first intro or that first component. I mean, relatability is foundational to friendship. It is a major key, but I think a lot of people overthink the initial process.
Very interesting. Why do you think that's so often? Because you're completely right. We have a bad first impressions, or something is basically wrong. We start our relationship with an argument, but then humans typically find a way, if they are obviously moral and meaningful in their path of discussing relationships, to actually come up with some type of ways in which they can actually become friends needless. Why do you think? What's that basically all about?
That's a really, really good question. Wow, that's really good. One of the things that I would definitely put people in the mindset of is understanding that everything is a discovery process. Most of the time, we tend to, when meeting new people, we do this unconsciously in some capacity, but we look to see, do you have the capability of being my best friend? Instead of just being like, hey, do you have the capacity of just being a normal friend? It's like, you're either my best friend or you're not. Oh, you're not. We're done here. So a lot of what we teach too is like having a discovery moment of like, hey, you're going to have these conversations, getting to know people, and it may not be the best fit, but it's going to take you some time to learn this. And if you understand that there is a process to this and it does take an extended period of time, it takes some of the pressure off of feeling like, oh, I got to get this right in the very beginning.
Absolutely, and you talk about this concept as well of turning friends into chosen family. How important is that chosen family for most people in quite, let's be honest, a quite lonely world, or at least it feels like it.
Mhm. I mean, most of the time that I talk to people, they say it's of highest importance. There's three circles to friendship, and there are sub circles within each of those ones. But just to give you the broader component of the main three, you have the environmental circle. These are the friends that you tend to see in a specific place on a regular basis, whether it's the gym, whether it's work or school, or just your local neighborhood. Right. So these are the places you typically only see there. Maybe you go to a club or a church event, whatever it may be. You tend to not take the relationship outside of the environment. So that's the first circle, the outer circle. Then you have the middle circle, which is the chosen one. These are the people that you are intentionally diving deeper into your friendship. You take them off of the sports field and you're like, hey, let's go meet out, like out of the gym into a new place, from work out to a new local area, right? So this is the area where you're starting to dive deeper into. They may get to see some of the pain in your life, or maybe you just share the victories in your life. And then you have the inner circle, which these are like a smaller group of people, like your ride or die, the ones that you spend the most time with, the ones you could call up at 2 a.m. And when I talk to people about what type of friendships they're looking for, it's typically in that inner circle. Like, I want someone who feels like family. I want to get that area. And this is what we subconsciously compare everyone to, is like, are you inner circle material? And it's like, oh, well, I actually have a lot of close friends. I don't have room for that. Right. And so it's understanding that every circle is really important. But when I hear people, when it comes to building family, it tends to be their most important thing. When, especially with men, they're like, I want a brotherhood. It's like, well, brotherhood is inner circle. That's what you're typically referring to and trying to get to, and have that tight knit community. It takes time to get there.
When you're thinking about the necessary actions that you typically need to do in order to bring a friendship to basically face to the other circle, to the other, perhaps to use your language, what does those typically consist of?
So, great question. And this is a main component to the friendship blueprint. So, what we teach in the blueprint is you pick 1 to 3 people, and the goal of the entire blueprint is to get them from one circle to the next. Now, for example, I mentioned that there are sub circles, right? So, in in the environmental circle, there's one called the comfort circle. These are the people that when you are in that specific environment, you feel really comfortable around them. You actually gravitate towards them. If you go to like a bar or if you go to a gym, you're looking for them. Like, where is this person? I want to be around them because I'm in this place. Or maybe you go and all your friends hang out and it's like a group of friends and you're like, oh, well, I want to be around this guy. Like, this is the one person I want to be around. And then in the next stage in the chosen circle, you have the victory friend. Now, these people are the ones that you tend to share some of your hard pain, the difficulties of life, the struggles, but not when you're in the moment of it. It's after it has passed, when you have victory in it. And so they don't really have a voice speaking into the hard points. You're not going to call them when things get hard. Or maybe you just want to celebrate and you just had a win, a success, and you want to tell someone these might be the person you call. And so what we do is we ask people, where is the person that you want to go deeper with? What circle are they in currently? And then we try and get them to move to the very next one. So it's one circle at a time, moving progressively. And when it comes to how, it really comes down to where they are in the circle, right? We teach different language in the blueprint. Like, for instance, if they're in the early stages of friendship, you're just getting to know them, then you use very open, casual language. Like, don't be direct and super intentional with it. It's not time for that yet. We need to keep things open. But then when you get deeper into it, that's when you can be really intentional. You can be very direct in certain areas, but it depends on where the friendship is.
Yes, and you mentioned something so important, which I was able to see from my own observation as well. But vulnerability is such a key component of strengthening friendship. But one thing that has always been
Mhm.
interesting to me is how do you show that vulnerable basically state without oversharing? Do you have any golden tips or rules of thumbs for doing the balance?
Yeah, absolutely. We have what is called ankle deep vulnerability. And this is taking the vulnerable approach slowly. And so, a major component of this is, how do you know you're going ankle deep? Well, you should be sharing facts with emotion when you're not currently feeling that emotion. What does that mean? It means that you're just like, hey, yesterday was really hard at work. All right, that's a
Hmm.
fact. It was kind of struggling, and I was really frustrated and upset because my boss came at me and just kind of yelled at me. That's the emotion that you're feeling it. However, in the moment you're sharing it, you're not upset. You're not mad. You're not angry. That's a form of ankle deep, right? Like, it's information that if someone was sitting next to you, you wouldn't be too upset if they heard it. And so what you do is you take this ankle deep approach and you go deeper and deeper, slowly revealing more vulnerability. Because I don't know about you, but there was so many conferences and books and trainings and podcasts that teach, like, hey, if you want vulnerability or if you want connection, you have to be completely vulnerable. You have to reveal your deep dark secrets to people. But then you do, and what happens? They don't have the capacity to handle that. So it pushes them away. And now when they see you, they turn the other direction. And then this is what I did when because I started doing that. I heard, oh, just be vulnerable, just share everything about like what's going hard in your life. So I did push people away, and I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. So let me just not share anything. And then that pushed people away.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because in many ways, and I love this quote by Brené Brown, which is truly vulnerability is the birthplace of connections. In many
Yes.
ways, without vulnerability, might as well be talking to a robot, right? That's why we're human beings. That's why it's so meaningful to communicate with each other. But definitely striking this balance is definitely an art. And so this ankle deep concept, were you the innovator of it? Were you the one that taught about this principle?
I am, yeah. Yeah, I coined the term, and I've created this principle going through. And because I mean, I was struggling with it. I needed something new. I needed something different. I was hurting so much and trying to find people that I can connect with, but I just couldn't seem to get it right. You know, I was that person who would go to and listen to like Brene Brown and listen to all these thought leaders and go to all these events, and I never left knowing the step by step blueprint. I never understood, like, how do I apply this practically? Like, Brene Brown was one of the first people, and I love what she's done, because without her, vulnerability wouldn't even be a thing. Like, she not coined the term vulnerability, but made it
Yes.
mainstream, the idea of being vulnerable. And she was one of the first things I heard, and I took it and I ran with it. And she's like, vulnerability is strength. I'm like, great, here's all my pain. And it didn't quite, and it hurt the people around me, unfortunately. And the sad part is I started to blame everyone. I blame them, like, oh, you're not vulnerable. Oh, you don't even like deep conversation. Oh, you don't love me. You don't care enough. And it was everyone's fault until I learned, wait a minute, I just needed to have the skill to be able to reveal a little bit at a time. Like, I give this analogy, which is, imagine a balloon. If you take a balloon right out of the package, just fresh out of it, it's really tight. It's not elastic. And if you put a lot of air pressure into it immediately, it pops. But if you take that same balloon and you put a little bit of air into it, it expands, and then it gets used to that. You put a little bit more into it, it expands. You a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, letting the skin of it get used to it. When eventually, and then you can blow all the air out, and then you take this massive vulnerability truth bomb, and it can withstand it because it had that piece of understanding. A lot of the times, most of most of us don't know how to handle other people's trauma or hurt or pain or deep vulnerabilities because we don't know them. And so what's happening is when you over dump on them, they feel so uncomfortable not because of the information you shared, but because they don't know how to care for you. They are so ill equipped. They don't have that relational equity with you yet. And what you're doing when you go ankle deep is you're giving them the capacity. You're teaching them how to care for you. You're showing them that it's like, hey, I can go here and come back. And like, they're learning like little things on how to care for you in those small moments. So when it gets to the big moment, they're prepared.
Absolutely. Slowly but surely, like anything in life, I think wins the race. You're talking about this balloon analogy, which is very great imagery. When you're, let me ask you a profound question. Before you founded basically the friendship blueprint, in your opinion, was your struggle with friendship with finding quality opportunity to seek a friendship, or your misunderstanding of what was necessary to make the most out of the quality potential friendship that you were basically encountering?
Yes, I would say it would be the latter, the one where I struggled to make the most out of the friendships I had around me. See, I have this really weird, interesting, sad story essentially. Because when I was a lot younger, I desired to be accepted. That's all I really wanted. I wanted to be accepted by a lot of people because anytime I watch TV or I watch movies, like you were accepted based on the quantity of friends that you had. And if you only had one friend, well, then you were a loser. You weren't cool. You weren't fun. You weren't popular. And I'm like, okay, so I got to have quantity over quality. I didn't understand at the moment, but I was this weird kid who ended up making friends who loved me for the way that I was, my quirkiness, my weirdness, my strangeness. But I ended up turning my back on them so that I could be popular, so that I could have a quantity of friends. So I turned my back on the people that fully accepted me and I changed who I was so that they would accept me. And then it was sad because there would be multiple times my weirdness would come out and I'd be a little silly and they would shut me down. They'd yell at me, they'd call me names, and I couldn't ever be who I was. But I learned these skills to be quote unquote popular. And so as I got older, I became almost this like chameleon. It's like, okay, let me go into a new area. Oh, they're like this. Let me just fit in. It came to the point where I was surrounded by my friends and I felt so alone. I was surrounded by people that knew me, but didn't actually know me. And I was so sad and it made me feel like I didn't belong. It was one of the main reasons I left where I'm from California and living out there for so long. And I felt like I didn't belong. And so I left and moved to Florida and then encountered the same issue again. And then I moved to Austin and I encountered the same issue again. And I'm like, why is this following me? And so that's where I started pursuing. I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe the problem isn't them. Maybe it's actually me.
Absolutely. When you're thinking about that social pressure, how heavy and how big of a piece do you think it is of the actual friendship problem in the modern age?
Oh, yeah, it's a big problem. I mean, what we're trying to do, our brain is really fascinating and how it works. And so our brain is always looking for a solution. And if our desire is to be accepted and to be known and to be seen, our brain will figure out any way to do it. And so if it looks like showing up into a certain place and fitting in and giving into the social pressures around you, especially when you're a college student or in high school or even at work a lot of the times, let me just fit the mold. Like you might not smoke, but then you see your coworker smoking and to be accepted, you start smoking. And you take on these terrible habits that are continuous because you just want to be seen. Because our brain, when it has a goal, when it has a desire, it will figure out how to do it in any possible way, especially if you don't know the tools or the framework. If you don't know the elements to the friendship blueprint, your body will just figure it out however it wants to. And that creates a serious issue, especially when you encounter circles of friendships that are really unhealthy.
When you're thinking of the process of wanting approval by others, and perhaps this overwhelming stress of just finding a way to basically be accepted, do you think that comes from fear of yourself and perhaps like basically um, lack of self-love?
Yes, I do. I think that's a definite component of it. It comes a lot of the times with not understanding your needs, which is why that's the very first thing that we go into in the friendship blueprint is understand what you need. Because if you don't understand who you are or what you need, then what you're going to do is you're going to seek validation and you're going to look for other people to tell you what you need.
Yes, exactly. And in many ways, you can't love everybody else if you don't love yourself, right? It's plain
Yeah.
and simple. What are a couple of few tricks or rules of thumb that you found to perhaps propulse yourself to love yourself first and therefore better be equipped to love others?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the main things is understanding the story that you're telling yourself. So, when you're in a certain situation, I always recommend people, it's like, all right, what is the story that's going on? When you are surrounded by friends and you want to talk to them or you want to share like a new thing you saw on TikTok or YouTube and you're like, I want to share this topic, but then you don't. Why? Start asking yourself why. Why did I not do it? A lot of the times there's a story that plays in our head, which is like, oh, I just saw this super cool thing on YouTube. I want to share it. And then you go to share it and you resist. And it's like, wait a minute. Well, last time I shared this, they made fun of me. They laughed at me for finding something off of TikTok. It's like, hey, I saw this really cool thing. Like maybe it was a new study and a doctor came on TikTok and they talked about their new recent study that they did as a doctor. But then you mention the word TikTok and you get ridiculed. And so now this story is like, oh, it's not safe to share anything off TikTok anymore. If I share this to this group of friends, this is the story that's going in your head. So a way to start loving yourself more and understanding yourself more is understanding the stories that are going on in your mind. And so an interesting component of like there's what I did in the friendship blueprint is I created these 20 mindset shifts. So there's 20 mindsets or thoughts that a lot of people have when it comes to what prevents them from having friendship, right? So if I show my real self, people will reject me, is one of them. Or people won't like me because of what I can do for them. Or maybe if I open up, people will think I'm too much. And so these are things that I created, about 20 of them, and I give them away for free with the Friendship Blueprint. That's a free resource that's in the members area when they log in. And so I wanted to help people understand what are ways to reframe their mindset so they can have successful friendships, because it does start with you. But those are just a couple tools that I use to help people with that.
Sure. To me, what you're talking about is in many ways setting boundaries, right? And setting boundaries in friendships to stay close, but without losing yourself. And this is such a key component, I think, of any relationship, but definitely friendship, and something that I have been struggling with, basically myself, as I'm getting quite personal here. The Very often I believe that authenticity basically is emerging from your soul, and therefore who you truly are as a person and what you want to represent and which tribe you attribute yourself and so on. But what I was doing was I was trying to find like-minded people around my areas and basically in my environments, and I was not finding any. Right, it was very hard to connect on any deep level. Do you feel like sometimes when you have a firm understanding of who you are, but you just don't feel like it's connecting with anybody else? What could be a couple of tricks to bridge that gap?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of a double-edged sword in a way, because once you understand a little bit more about who you are and what you need, it does end up getting somewhat harder to just walk into a random place and make a friend, because you start reading into things and you start looking at things, you start gauging it off that component, and we start putting too much pressure again on that initial conversation to feel like, do you match my checklist? And now it becomes this dating thing where it's like, oh yeah, you need to be this type of friend with me, which sometimes you really do need, and sometimes it actually gets in the way because we bring that in way too early, when in fact we need those environmental friends, we need a large amount of people, we need neighbors. And there's so many studies that have come out that show there is a mental health impact by having a quantity of friends that you just see in certain places and have social interactions with. But when it comes to trying to bridging the gap with people where you know a bit more about yourself and you're trying to find more people like that, I would ask the question, where are my people congregating? Right? If you are someone who loves to stay indoors and they like to play board games and connect with people while you play board games, maybe check out some stores that sell board games or even host board game areas. once you know, understand more about what you need, you can go to those places, right? Like, for instance, I wanted men in my life that wanted to go deep and share parts of their heart, and like the hard parts, like the most difficult, painful moments of their life. That's what I wanted. And so what I did is I looked for places that were fostering that. And I found a couple areas like that. For example, finding things like with Jake Hamilton, who does The Fight. This is The Fight. And it's for men who want to go deep and want to actually improve themselves in a much more holistic way of going deeper into your soul. Right. And so I found the community that I needed to connect with, and I went there. There was another time where I'm like, man, I really just want to have fun with some people. Like, I just need to have an enjoyable time. And just every time I meet them, I want to be able to go out and just have fun. So I joined a couple clubs. I went out and I said, where are these people located? Because once you understand what you need and what you're desiring, then you just have to think, well, where are they? Yeah, you might struggle when you go into a bar, or you might struggle when you go into the gym because you got to filter those out. But you just go where they're congregating and you'll have a much better time.
Absolutely. Change your environments, and typically it does a much better job when it suits yourself, no doubt. When we are both entrepreneurs, and I don't know about you, but I'm a big planner, right? I like things to be organized, and knowing the KPIs and everything is going the right direction and so on. Very often, and this is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs and just people in business in general struggle with. I have this hamster kind of like running in my mind where I say, well, what's the cost, the opportunity cost of spending 4 hours with this person on something that will not give me any direct value, let's say monetary value, if we're just talking about business, and how can you alleviate yourself to a point where, well, you actually understand that, sure, that talk basically in the bar, for example, won't give you any money, but it might help you in other stage of life to a more harmonious, basically, I suppose, lifestyle and understanding of a meaningful life. I always struggle with that, this cost of opportunity. Do you have any perhaps any thoughts to share on how people maybe can be a little bit more lighthearted and not be so focused on what is a transactional exchange between human beings?
Yeah. I mean, well, first off, I would honestly play into those strengths. If that's the way you think and you struggle to turn it off, then don't turn it off. You just change how it's formatting, how the input looks, right? So you always look at the opportunity cost, and you're analyzing things. You want things to be organized. Well, use that to your benefit to building friendships. And what that could look like is saying, what's the value in building friendship, and using your mindset to figure out, what am I investing in here, and start changing the way your mind is thinking. And it has to shift from financial. However, it does have a financial impact. It really does, because when you have mental health, when you have fulfillment in your life, when you have meaning in your life, you operate in every other area of your life better. There is no compartmentalization in our life as much as we want that to be. How you operate when you're at home in your kitchen is how you operate in your business world. How you operate with your friends is how you operate with your spouse. How you operate while you drive behind the scenes is how you operate when you're in the grocery store. Like, it all carries over. And the truth is, when you do take the time to pour into friends or have them pour into you, it flows over. So what I would do in that case is I would start figuring out, what is the meaning of me building out this friendship? And if you can understand too, it takes a long time to build a friendship. And that's a sad reality that none of us want to hear, and that's what people are doing. They're trying to microwave friendship connection by sharing their deep, dark secrets. Because all we're trying to do is accelerate the process. We want that so deep. Well, how do I get deep, meaningful friendships? And how do I get a best friend? Oh, well, just make sure they see every component of yourself. Okay. And then they run away because it doesn't work. There's studies that show it takes 200 hours to make a best friend.
Wow. 200 hours. And but I like the fact that your model seems quite flexible. And yes, there's a structure, there's a blueprint, obviously as you call it, but it's a process that is applicable to anyone with their own biases, with their own biological preferences, their own life, and so on. Which I truly admire. That's what I got to learn in your process. And that's why I'm so basically so honored to platform you. When you think of this understanding of friends being a multiplier in life, you have friends, and therefore they give you some sense of freedom, of security, of fun, which not only makes you a better person, but therefore more equipped to serve the world in your business or even elsewhere. I love this. I heard this quote. It's a funny one, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. It was a quote by Salman. How do you pronounce her last name? Ruchi, something like that. Again, pardon me if you're listening to this podcast. I love you. And she said, in the cookie of life, friends are the chocolate chips. Do you see
I
where
love
she
that.
coming from with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's what brings the flavor. It's what brings the sweetness to your life. It's what brings the fullness. It's like you could have a cookie with no chocolate chips and it'll get the job done. But when you add those chocolate, it's funny because if you just add even one chocolate, it changes the flavor. Just one piece of chocolate. And that is so significant in our lives. And the more chocolates you have, I mean, the more flavor it changes. And a lot of times it gets sweeter, better, more enjoyable. So I definitely see where she's coming from. And I agree with that statement. That's a really amazing way to phrase it.
Yes, and to a lot of us in where we have high hourly rate, or we believe our time is valuable, and this whole concept of cost of opportunity. One thing that is very important, and I love if you can perhaps enlighten me on this one, is how can you? What are some practical tips for genuine conversation that get away from small talk as quickly as possible? I cannot handle small talk. After 2 minutes or so, I'm completely disconnected. I'm already thinking about the client that I had basically prior in, in the last client in the business. Is there any practical shift to not force it? Again, we want to be authentic, but just ways in which you can shape perhaps the position in the relationship a bit better so we
Mm-hmm.
can get off this phase as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the main things that we teach in the blueprint is that you need to understand the goal of the friendship and what you're trying to do. It doesn't have to be the entirety of the whole friendship. What's the goal of our entire friendship? It's the goal of the interaction. It's the goal of when you're hanging out with them and you have that meeting time with them. Like, why are you there? If you're just there to have a beer and just chat about the world and whatever it is, like that's fine. And that's what a lot of us do. We just show up and we just go wherever we want it to go. But when you have an idea of like, wow, you know what? I really want to get to know them more, because your needs change based on the circle you're in. We don't have needs that are the same across the board. Your needs for an environmental friend are different than your needs in someone in the inner circle. And so it's important to understand, what do I need and what does it look like? Now, I give there's an analogy that I share, which is the difference between needs and expectations. Now, needs are, if you take them away, you will die. They are the things that sustain your life. So if you have a flower, and if you take away the dirt, that flower it's not going to last much longer. Or if you take away the water, it's not going to last much longer. Or if you take away the sun, it's going to die. Now, expectations, however, that's how you fulfill on the needs. So what kind of soil are you going to use? How are you going to tend the soil? How are you going to water? Are you going to use a pail? Are you going to use a hose? Are you going to rely on rainwater? And what about the sun? Are you going to put it near a window? Are you going to put it outside? Does it need to be in the desert? Does it need to be secluded in some capacity? And so a lot of the times what we need to do is understand what we need and then how it's going to look like to fulfill that need, which is the expectation. And so when you go into these areas and you understand the goal, then it's like, okay, well, I want to get to the point where I can trust them to speak more into my life. But to do that, I need to understand, like, can I trust them when I share parts of my heart? How do they like to give advice? And when you understand like what you're looking for and what you do, and I always recommend like communicating to the person you're with of why you're kind of hanging out and letting them know like in a super short way. Like this could take like 10 seconds. Like, hey, I'm so glad we got here and we're hanging out. I'm looking forward to just getting to know you more. Or man, I'm just so glad to just chill here and watch a movie and not talk about anything heavy, or I'm ready to go deep, and making sure you're on the same page. And so when you have that, it moves you really quick out of small talk. But I do say, and I know this is maybe controversial, I don't know, but I don't believe small talk is the enemy. It's actually a tool to be used. And so small talk, it's meant for that first 5 to 10 minutes where you're settling into a new environment. It allows everyone to get a little bit more comfortable. Typically, you're meeting up somewhere or someone's coming. Maybe they're going to your house and maybe you're comfortable, but they're not. It allows them to get situated with the new environment, and then you start moving in. But, if you know that it's like a tool that I'm going to use for the first 5 to 10 minutes, then it becomes okay to enter into that type of talk for a little bit. It's when we're in small talk for like a half hour. That's where we die inside.
No, absolutely. And it all depends on obviously who you are and what you're trying to achieve. I have absolutely nothing against small talk. I was just sharing a personal insight that
Yeah.
personally those are not the talk that I prefer.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no doubt.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're a very thoughtful man, so I can definitely see this. In many ways, would you say that a lot of the essence of building stronger friendship is just through consistent and very much small acts, but that they're just consistent. We get to know each other, we get to rely on each other, we get to trust each other more. Isn't that the very much the essence and the foundation of any relationship you try to move forward with?
Oh yeah. If you remove the consistency, you won't have a friendship. There's this lie that goes around saying that friendship should happen organically. That's just not true. Friendships don't happen organically. It's actually more forced consistency that builds friendships. And what do I mean by that? I mean, look at most of the friendships that we have in our life that we did not intentionally pursue. Most of
Mm-hmm.
the friendships came from school, or they came from work, or they
Mm-hmm.
came from consistently showing up to the same environment over and over and over again, creating that consistency, putting in the time, the hours, and eventually a couple years go by and you've already invested 100 hours with someone because you're in the same environment over and over and over again, building that connection. And so a lot of times when we enter in our adulthood, or maybe you work you're a solopreneur, or you're working from home and you lose out on that. You move to a new state and you don't go out and you're like, well, I went to this place twice. Why don't I have friends? And it's like, no, you have to have consistency. And, it's the 6 elements of the friendship blueprint. The last one is repeat. And so you have to go through the whole thing again and again and again, because it's a simple framework. I mean, when it's so simple in its essence, it's crazy how simple, but when I teach it in the process, I go much deeper into it and expand on it, kind of like how I'm doing here. But I do tell people it's going to take 200 cycles of the friendship blueprint to have that inner circle friend and kind of get in there instead of the 200 hours. I just say, hey, just do this process 200 times and you'll be good to go.
Sure. It's interesting to me because what I feel like we have as a problem in the modern world is we seem to be closer and closer to people that were far apart geographically speaking, but farther and farther apart about people that are actually closest neighbors to us. I know. Let me tell you this: I know way much more people 1,000 miles away from myself than on my own street where I live. Where do you think that comes from?
Whew, there's a lot of theories that kind of go into that place. There is the component of social isolation.
Mhm.
There's the component of time. So, for instance, there was a study, a lot of like social experiments that happened where they ran this. Gosh, I think it was like a college study or something, and they put this person in need across the path of a bunch of students. They sent these students and they wanted to go this way, and they gave one group, they said, hey, doesn't matter how long you get there, just get there sometime today, ideally, if you can. The other one, they said, hey, you have like 30 minutes to get there. And then the last one is like, you need to get there as soon as you possibly can. And what they did is they put the same person in need across everyone's path. And they
Mm-hmm.
found that the majority of everyone who had time stopped to help them. Much smaller percentage of the people who had like a somewhat time constraint, not a huge time constraint, but there was still, it's like, oh, they kind of like judged it a little bit and they decided like, you know what, I'll help them. So it was like a very small percentage, like 30, maybe 40% of the people helped them. And then when it came to the people who were like, you need to get there now, no one helped them. And so a lot of the times what we're doing is we're running on busy schedules and we don't make time for them. It's like we always have something that we need to get to. It's like you're coming home from work and your neighbor's outside, or I only have a couple hours to relax and chill out. I don't want to start a conversation because I'm tired. And so I'm just going to go home. It's all time based in a lot of ways of how we make these decisions. And it's consistent. It's like, okay, I have people in my apartment that I run across sometimes. And it really depends on my time if I talk to them. It's like, well, I'm leaving. Like, that's the reason I'm leaving my house and I even see you is because I'm going somewhere. Most of us don't have that community style where you sit on your porch and you just relax. And even when you do that, you tend to get to know your neighbors a lot more. Putting yourself in positions where you can have that relationship being built, you consistently showing up. A lot of times we don't have those connections in our neighborhood because we're not consistently coming outside our house. That's just one
It,
of couple.
no, absolutely. In such a stressful world, in an age where again our life is so digitalized, what are some practical tips to make some time for friendships and actually be intentional towards the not only the value but how to create these friendship in the first place?
Yeah, well, you need to understand your schedule and you need to start putting it into your schedule to be more intentional. And what I did is in the friendship blueprint, because I mean, normally I sell the friendship blueprint for $97. Right now, I've launched it at $7 just to get the information out there and make sure, like, hey, this is available to you. Go get this now. And what I did is I wanted to make it such an unbelievable offer for people to really start changing and impacting communities that I included like 5 bonuses for people. And one of those bonuses is an intentional friendship challenge, which they can activate at any time. It's going to be an email every day sent to their inbox on one thing they can do to intentionally reach out to a friend. And so you find this time and you schedule this part of your day. You schedule a time. It's like, okay, every day at this time, I'm going to reach out to some friends. And there's a difference between myself and one of my best friends. His circle of friendships from the last 20 years is significantly more than mine. Why? Because he consistently has been reaching out to people for years, even if it's a small touch point. It could be the smallest touch point ever, but then it's like, oh, we're still connected. It reminds people that we're still connected. And so a lot of times what I see, especially business people, which you have an intense schedule a lot of the time, and I get it, I'm one of them, and you have to put it on your calendar. And one of the things we recommend before even asking people to hang out is understand your schedule. Come prepared. Like, if you don't know your schedule, then nothing is going to get scheduled. And you're going to fall into this abyss of like, well, I'll reach out to you. I'll reach out. Oh, we'll figure it out. No, no, no. You have to come prepared. And one of the things you come prepared with is like 2 to 3 available times that you have, because most likely they're not going to be able to fit all 3 of them. And so you have one that's like, all right, yeah, well, how about this? All right, perfect. I got it. If you don't understand your schedule, you're not setting intentional time for this, then it's not going to happen. We can go years. I mean, Jim Carrey had this amazing quote which says, be careful, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but be careful with isolation because you'll grow to love it. You'll grow to love being isolated and alone, and it has so many terrible mental health effects over you in the long run, but you become habitual to a place of isolation. And then because it takes years to build really quality friendship, which is none of us want to hear. All of us want immediate friendships, but it does take years to build them. When we actually need them, they'll be there. It'll be too late to start forming them in the time of absolute need. That's why you have to start now. The greatest time to plant a tree was yesterday, but you can do it today.
Yes. That's beautiful. That's very deep, by the way. I didn't know this quote. You touch on something that I call the gold mine. The gold mine is in the follow up, as we like to say as business people. when you're thinking about this relationship between staying connected but then without feeling needy, is how can we strike a balance? But most importantly, do you have any practical strategies for nurturing relationships without any kind of like seeming intrusive?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a common issue and fear that a lot of people have is, and I've felt this too in the past. Like I didn't want to reach out to anyone because I'm like, well, they're busy. I don't want to feel like I'm encroaching. But the truth is that asking someone to hang out is a gift. Like there was a time I was with my friends knew I was super busy. Like I had a crazy work schedule at the time. Like I would literally see them for moments of the day because I was so crazy busy. And then I looked and I saw that they all went and hung out. They went and got dinner. And I knew they knew I wasn't available. But I was like, man, I didn't get the invite. Dang, like I wanted to just, I knew I couldn't go, but I just wanted to be invited because it's a gift. And anytime it's like, there might be people that I'm not fully connected yet with, but they're reaching out to me and they're showing interest. It feels good. It's like, oh, yeah, it's like I feel wanted. And so when you understand that you're adding value to that person's life just by asking them for their time.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned this because don't you think we create some type of false expectations because we can see all our friends' action live on Instagram or in stories or in posts that they might do basically a few hours after they finish up eating dinner? Is how can we make sure that we don't get bitter about those though? Because that will definitely happen. Any basically strategy when it comes to the I would have loved to receive an invite and to feel included and feel valued, but it wasn't the case. And now I'm still trying to obviously keep this friendship intact and meaningful. Is there perhaps any sorts of guidance on that?
Yeah, there's 2 points that is really critical to understand. They're principles of life essentially. But if you ever want to grow your patience, this is how you do it. You grow your understanding. If you start asking yourself questions to understand what was going on, your patience grows with that significantly. And so you go to understand, like, well, of course they want to hang out. I'm probably going to butcher this where it's like, I heard this recently. Someone brought it up to me. I love it. They're basically saying, when you're friends with someone, you're not committed to them for the rest of your life, and there's not only going to be one. They're not your spouse. And so it's okay to have multiple. And when you understand that, it's like, oh, it's okay that my friends have friends. Like that means they're living a healthy lifestyle. But it's so crazy to watch this. But the areas of life that we desire, we tend to cast the most judgment. And we tend to be the most bitterness to it. And I had this sharp realization in my life, actually somewhat recently, like I think, gosh, I don't even think it was a few months ago, where I was sitting there and someone brought this up and they're like, hey, like look in your heart and see where you might have judgment. And I realized, oh, I'm judging people in my friendship circles that are building businesses. And I was actually becoming bitter and resentment. And I'm a business leader and I'm creating businesses. I should be celebrating them. But because I had this thing going on in my head, I was actually casting judgment. I was cursing the very people and the area of influence that I have. And here's the principle of life. Anything you put out is going to be coming back to you. So if you're casting judgment in all these places and you're cursing your friends for hanging out with them, for hanging out without you, instead of celebrating them, it has an impact on you. Like that judgment begins to grow into bitterness and hurt in your life. So you have to start building understanding, and then you have to start sending yourself to a point where you can start having celebrations for people's wins. Meaning you see them hanging out and you go, oh, yes, I'm so glad it is. I started doing my business. I started seeing friends who were succeeding. I'm like, let's go. Yes, you did it. That's amazing. I saw someone lock down like an amazing podcast. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. I know how hard that is. Or they launched a business. I'm like, I know how hard that is. That's amazing. And I started to think about like, oh, how difficult those things were. I can think about it. We're in our 30s and 40s and 50s. It's so difficult to lock down friendships and hang out. You see your friends hanging out. It's like, oh, I'm glad they got together. I'm glad they did this. You have to start shifting your mindset to celebrating them. Otherwise, you're literally going to push people away because internally you're judging them. And that judgment is just growing inside of you, and it's going to increase into bitterness and hurt and hate.
Yes, what goes around comes around is always how I like to put it, and it's so important to be generous of your time, generous of your love, generous of your knowledge and wisdom as well. When and one thing that is always struck me as a challenge, because we live in such, and by the way, we're both in America for our global audience. We live in such a stressful time where everything is based on performance. Everything is based on your, hey, how can I increase my input so I can have more outputs. It's so interesting to correlate this relationship between yourself, your own expectation of what you should do, but then your life kind of slowly drifting away in a world of loneliness, in a world of where you feel this void that you might have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in the bank, but still feel like there's something missing. And when you're thinking about it, and the challenge of making friends as an adult, and why do you think it becomes harder as we age? And most importantly, perhaps, how can we overcome these barriers intentionally?
So, if I understand that correctly, why does it get difficult to build these friendships as we get older? Did I understand that correctly? So, a lot of that is because of this lie that friendship should be organic, and we don't actually learn the skills and the framework to building friendships. When you were younger, you had either a parent figure, a father figure, a mentor who said, when you go into this job interview, what I want you to do is I want you to stick out your hand. I want you to shake them. I want you to make sure the web to web in the hand. I want you to not squeeze too tightly. Don't be weak as well. Look them in the eyes, smile, introduce yourself, sit down. And so it's funny because when you do this, the very first time you walk in as like a teenager, your first job interview, you're thinking about this and you're like, smile, look them in the eyes. Oh, grab their hand. Oh, is that too tight? Oh no. And then you're like stressed. Like, did I do that right? And we're thinking these through, but eventually we go into a place and we do that unconsciously. We don't even think about it. And we still like naturally look them in the eye, shake their hand and smile instinctively. And a lot of us never even learn the tools to building friendship. We never learn the framework of like, what does it look like? One of the two things that I teach in part of the six elements, there's two at the end, which is you need to follow up with them, or you need to reflect, and then you need to follow up. So what do I mean by this? I mean, after you hang out with someone, you need to sit down and start engaging with yourself and the emotions that you were feeling and realizing, how did that go? When I shared a little bit of my heart and I was going ankle deep in vulnerability, did I feel cared for? Did I feel like they talked over me? Did I feel like they loved me? All these different things that is so critical to understanding yourself. There's multiple studies. I think there's a great TED Talk out right now, or I think it did millions of views, just talking about the value of reflecting and how little people even do this. Like, so many people don't even do the basics of just reflecting in their day-to-day life, let alone do they reflect about their friendships. And so in the Friendship Blueprint, this is another tool that I have given away for free that you can get access to. It's the Heart Check Clarity Guide. And it's a whole 10-step process of questions you can ask yourself after you hang out with to better understand what was going on in your heart so you can understand it. But then you don't leave it there. You take that, and let's say they kept interrupting you, or maybe they ignored you, or they did something that just like irked you, or maybe you said something that you were embarrassed and you're like running over here and like, man, why did I say that? I feel so dumb. And so what you do is you follow up with them. You have to have that follow up, right? I love what you say. The gold is in the follow up. This is absolutely true in business, but it's also true in your personal life. It's one of my weakest areas, which I'm getting better and better about all the time, which is why I created the Friendship Intentionality Challenge, because I needed something. But my wife is amazing at this. And like I said, there's 6 elements to building a friendship, and most of us are really good at 2, maybe 3, but typically are weak at least 3. 2 or 3 we're not so great at. Mine is follow-up, which I'm working on. But what you do is you give them the opportunity to hear your heart. So you follow up, whether it's through text, whether it's through email, whether like in person is also a great time to do it, where you just share like, hey, like when this happened, that time we hung out like last week, I felt this, or when this happened, or I felt this when this happened, or, you know, whatever it may be, or I said this thing, it made me feel really dumb. Like, how did you hear that? Like, did you feel that way? Because I just want to apologize if I did something to hurt you. And so you follow up. And these are tools and frameworks that, I mean, how many of us were taught this? And so we get into our 40s and 50s, and of course it's going to get harder. We don't have the tools. We don't have the framework. We don't know. No one explained to us how to have friends. They just said, go do it. And we kind of figured it out along the way. And some of us got hurt. Some of us, like, again, what's a story that you're telling yourself on a regular basis? Like, you go and you have friends with someone and you get a beer with them, and then they don't like the beer you're drinking and they kind of tease you for it. And now you don't want to invite anyone to go get a beer because you think they're going to tease you for your choice of drink. Or now you can't be authentic, which our main company is the Authentic Friend, right? Like that's our parent company. And why? It's because authentic means it's 100% you. And you can't be 100% you if you're hiding the beer you like because you want to be accepted.
No, absolutely. And it's so interesting because I want to rebound on the comment you made, which I think was so insightful. You say in many ways, building a friendship is giving a chance for them to hear your heart. Dive a little bit deeper into that. How important is that heartfelt component?
It's huge. It's massive. It's what builds the connection. Like you think, of course, when you hang out, that is a major component to building that connection. And that's typically the only place we ever have that. But you can accelerate your process in friendship if you want to go faster, like really quickly. Then what you do is you follow up and you give them a chance to love you. I mean, this works really well, especially with men, but of course with women too. But men love to fix things. They want to just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And a lot of men shoot it straight a lot of the time. And so if you go to your friend and you say, hey, here's the manual on how to love me, I'd be like, yes, great. All right, this is what I got to do. Oh, perfect. Oh, I just got it. That's easy. I can do that. I can love you well. But a lot of times we never do it. We keep it to ourselves because we don't want to feel needy. We're so scared of rejection or being like pushed away and losing our place of acceptance that we hide our needs, which again, you can't have meaningful friendships. You can't be seen and known if you never reveal who you are, if you never reveal your hurt, if you never reveal your pain and that they caused. You know, it could have been a trigger. It could have been like they said something, they're like, oh, that's stupid. And then you have a story that goes like, oh, I had an old friend who kept calling me stupid and that friendship was terrible and toxic. And now you're bringing that on him. Maybe it's you. That's why the heart check clarity guide is really important. I think a question on there is, have you experienced this in the past? Like it's figuring out, is it more me or is it more them? And then you have a conversation like, man, you know, I was actually I was hurt by that. And this is why, but you're revealing more about yourself a little bit at a time, but it's key. It is foundational.
Yeah, I think by the way that's why Bob the Builder has so many friends, right? He's just great at having the manual, the manual for friendship.
That's right. I love that.
No, but I think what you're saying is there's so much wisdom because truly life feels lonely if you don't have any friends. Life feels again void of meaning, and in many ways, I think that's what I mostly get from this conversation. But just to experience who you are and your very bubbly type of personality, which personally I absolutely adore, is what you need to meet people where they're at. That's another thing that I think I need to work on is this understanding that perhaps the first conversation will probably not be about Friedrich Nietzsche and the genealogy of morality. That's not what most people kick off with. That's just not the way it is. And this build up process, when you can have a process, most importantly, is so vital. Just like you have business process and KPIs to make sure that you're on track with your monthly, basically, whatever revenue metrics, for example. I think that we ought to tell the world that not only intentionality in friendship is important, but the value of that process is so crucial and should be something that pretty much everybody should focus on. And I was wondering. I'm quite an avid traveler. Are you a traveler, by the way? Do you travel
I
quite a
am, yeah.
bit?
I not as much right now, but yes, I love traveling. I've traveled a good amount. My favorite destination? Ooh, I had a lot of fun in the Philippines. I was in Manila and Bacolod. I really enjoyed that. I spent a little bit of time. Well, I love to say it. I actually went to Wuhan, China, like 2 years before the outbreak. So that was kind of fun to talk about with people. It's like, yeah, yeah. That was a really beautiful
Sure.
spot.
No, absolutely. And the reason why I'm going there is in your understanding and exploration of the world, do you feel like friendship is a concept that is universal? That not only we all see friendship, but it's pretty much more or less the same thing with being a friend
Mm-mm.
with a Filipino or a Canadian. Tell me more about these
No, no,
differences.
it's very different. Cultures will change significantly. I have someone recently come up to me because if I recall, she's from China. And the difference of friendship is so significant because there's such an emphasis on community. And especially where she grew up, like it was, if you weren't plugged into the community, something was really off and strange. Like there was a lot of support, like a lot of intentionality from everyone that was around there. It was a unit and across the entire city. When she came here, she found that so many people in the Western culture were very much so lacked intentionality, and it was a struggle for her because there wasn't this community even to plug into. Like if you go to certain places in China and you move, you can, especially for someone who's Chinese, they can somewhat plug into a community and get and not feel so isolated. But you come in here and you can feel isolated really quickly in the Western culture. And there are many other areas. I mean, it also depends on like what you're doing, like why is someone there. If you're on a business trip, like it might be a little bit difficult than like someone who's on like a ministry trip and they're bonding together by doing and work and different things like this. Like it, there's so many different criteria that comes into it, but there's tribal culture, there's the difference between warm and hot climates. Like you go to a cold climate area like Germany, and it's the people aren't so open. Why? Because, well, when the winter hits, people stay in their houses all the time. It's like forced isolation. So they don't look at you and they won't always smile at you when you're walking down the street. You know, California got to that point significantly, which is why I wanted to leave, which is crazy. Just in America, there's a significant difference because you go in there and you just don't look people in the eye in California where I was at. You just don't. You just walk, you mind your own business. But then I went to Florida and I was sitting at this restaurant on the patio and I was closer to the wall of the restaurant and their patio area was huge. It was like at least 20, 30 feet. It was like another like room of like a patio. And someone was walking down the sidewalk, stopped, looked at me and said, "Hey, how's it going?" And I was like, are you talking to me? Like, what? And then I went and sat on a bench and someone just walking by just stopped, like, huh, are you doing okay today? And I'm like, what is this? This is crazy. I'm like, this is not normal by any means. It There's a significant change in the dynamics and how they work. And it's really important to learn the culture that you're in, especially if you're an avid traveler, like how you connect with people in the South in America, and it's not how you're going to connect with people in Northern Europe or even Eastern Europe. Like there's a shift in that dynamic and how they build that friendship and how they build that connection. It all shifts.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I think that truly my objective, obviously, as I call being a man of the world, this understanding that we're all interconnected and interconnected, and most importantly, I suppose, striving towards an understanding in which why not think that everybody to some extent can respect each other and appreciate each other. Not everybody will be friends and love each other. That's obviously in utopia. But that being said, at least somewhat of a respect and appreciation for our differences at the very least. I think in America and in this very, again, performance based society, we typically, unfortunately, in many instances have this basically this kind of like forced disparity where we are led to believe that we're much more different than we truly are because we're actually very, very similar. I see this unfortunately increasing, and I've been on this search for only 20 years, so I rely on your experience as well. But I see this unfortunately not going in the right direction when it comes to our biases towards trying to again forcefully find things that are different instead of just embracing what we are similar towards. Do you think that that's how important is that perhaps in consists when you're building a friendship to be similar with the other person?
I mean, I would say it's very important in the beginning, or I would say we make it more important than it probably needs to be in the beginning. Um, I have one of my closest friends. We disagree on major things. We are so different, so different. However, there are a couple things that we highly connect with, and that's just people, in general. That's like ingrained in us. We bond over similarities, and it's going to happen naturally in some capacity. I think trying to fit someone in a certain box, and especially in the beginning stages of a friendship, not as important as we make it out to be. But if you want to create that connection, especially if you're traveling the world, finding a point of connection is going to enhance and accelerate the connection, right? That's what where a lot of us are looking for. In sales training, they tell you a lot of the time to make a friend. And how do you do that? Is you find a place of connection, and it builds this connection point with them. It's like, okay, there's a place of relatability. It's like, oh, you walk into someone's house and you notice like they got pictures of them doing soccer. And it's like, oh, I played soccer. And you create this point of connection, but that connection point isn't going to sustain the friendship. I had a buddy who is so good at dating women. And what I mean by this is he could literally go into most places and walk out with a very beautiful woman. However, he cannot keep any of them. And that is the difference, right? Like, relatability is a key thing in the beginning. I think we put too much emphasis and pressure on it in the beginning, but that relatability is not going to sustain you in the long run.
Beautiful. Mr. Shane Gerhard, it's been fantastic to converse with you and truly to platform what I think is such an interesting part of the human experience, which is friendship. I really appreciate your time. Would you like any last thoughts and closing statement for our audience, please?
Yeah, I just want everyone to know that you are capable and worthy of building friendship. You have what it takes within you. You are good enough to be a friend, and you will bring life to so many people if you just pursue this. And if you're looking for a framework on what do I do, what are the 6 elements, what's going on, you can find it at thefriendshipblueprint.com. It's right now, it's a limited offer. I don't know how long the price will be at this, but right now it's at $7. And when you get in, you get multiple free bonuses that I'm gonna give you. If you have a fear of rejection, then we have a mini course in there on the rejection proofing course on the different ways you can go through and process the different issues in your heart of like what's preventing you from reaching out. Or maybe you don't know how to process the emotions in your heart after hanging out. You're like, I don't know how to reflect. We give that away to you for free. Or I don't know how to be intentional with friends. I don't even know what it looks like to reach out, and I struggle in that area. Well, we have the 30-day intentional friendship challenge for free. And then likewise, maybe you don't know what to ask when you're hanging out with someone. How do I even go ankle deep, and what do those questions even look like? Well, we provided 50 plus questions in the membership area that you can access. Or maybe you're wondering like, man, I'm believing all these things. Like, I get that there's limiting beliefs that we might have that's preventing me from having friendships. Well, there's 20 friendship freedom shifts that we give you for free when you access this. And so I just want you to know, like, we're giving you all the tools you need to have the successful friendships that you desire.
Thank you for spending your time with us today on the Meaningful Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who could benefit from it. And always remember, your story matters. Make it meaningful. We hope to see you next time.